Hey good peeps, this is Kia Muze coming back at ya. This is going to be a Muse on Melody video. So we're going to break down How I Got Over as done by Aretha Franklin at her Amazing Grace series of recordings for the documentary that's going to be in wide release in early 2019. This is the end of 2018 as I'm recording now. So if you're familiar with my Muse on Melody videos, we haven't been doing them for very long, but there are song reviews, song vlogs, song podcasts. But anyway, before I get into that, please hit the subscribe button and also hit notifications. There's a lot of content that's going to be coming out of the Sing Kia Muze channel. As you already know, if you're already a subscriber, I'm a songwriter and I work in music technology. So there'll be original music coming out. There'll be music that's a part of different media projects that I want to share with you. Of course, there will be the song vlogs, which I love to do. For my Patreon subscribers, and some of it I put here, I do 16 bars, which is just me fooling around singing a cappella 16 bars of whatever song I can't seem to get out of my head. We also have desk concerts, and Ask Kia segments. Okay, let's get into How I Got Over. So the way I like to do the Muse on Melody, and it's different from video to video, but I like to break down just the writing of it, the production of it, the charting of it, how the song has performed, other people who have covered it, any type of live performances that the artist has done of it, and then I like to do a for the culture rating at the end. So with How I Got Over, it's, you know, this is going to be kind of dense. I have really like 4 pages of notes here because there's just, well, it's been 46 years since Aretha did the concert. So there's like 46 years of history. I can't even really begin to cover all of the history as it relates to the film, which we will get into. But just bear with me. It's super interesting and the song is super good. If you're here on my video, then obviously you probably have heard the song, and if you haven't, you will hear it. Not in this video because I don't want the video snatched down, but you can hear it after you hear me talk about it. Okay? Okay. So, as I said, at the taping of this particular video, this is December 30th, 2018. We just lost Aretha this summer, and I know most of you probably had a chance to see some part of her 9-hour funeral, which was held in Detroit, which was a epic display of black culture here in America, descendant of slave culture here in America, and it was, I thought it was fantastical. I mean, it's, you know, everything that I know and have grown up with and loved and appreciated. But anyway, this particular song, How I Got Over, was written by Clara Ward. Clara Ward is one of like the seminal American gospel voices, and she sang with her sisters, the Ward sisters, and they would travel all around the country, you know, singing at various churches, and not just at churches. I mean, the Ward sisters were very like prominent and famous. And after Aretha passed away this year, I read a few biographies on her. Aretha was a notorious control freak. As I feel like most celebrities are, you want to sort of control the narrative about yourself. So the books that I read were not necessarily like authorized biographies, but Aretha would like flirt with these authors and like get to know them, and you know, they'd be writing about her, and then it would like come time to like release the book and she'd be like, no. So a lot of the information, you know, came from these type of books, but this is what we have, right? Aretha's father was a very famous minister. Some say he, you know, might have been controversial. That's a whole nother video. But his lady friend was Clara Ward. And so Aretha grew up with her father and with Clara Ward being like a second mother to her because her mother lived in a different city. And so I think a lot of what Aretha has, you know, like vocally, her inflections, the way that she sort of approaches music came from Clara Ward. So it's like Clara, Aretha, you know, and I think a lot of times that sort of gets lost in the sauce. Like no one ever really talks about the Ward sisters unless you grew up in the black church. So if you're not familiar with the Ward sisters, definitely do your Googleations and check them out. And specifically, you want to check out How I Got Over, because Aretha's version of the song really is rooted in the Ward sisters' version of the song. The version of the song, though, that sort of got popular in the 50s and 60s was Mahalia Jackson's version of the song. And she sang it in a different key, kind of slower, like a slow shout. It was still a rousing shout stomp version of the song, but it just wasn't the up-tempo bouncy version that Aretha did in the film and that the Ward sisters would sort of do in the recording and on the road, etc. So the story behind the song is that the Clark sisters. I love the Clark sisters. I wish they would sing How I Got Over. The Ward sisters. The Ward sisters said that the story behind the song is that they were traveling in the South, you know, going from city to city for their performances, and they got accosted by a group of angry white men who seemed to be angry that, you know, these black women were riding. They would drive around in a Cadillac, you know. Cadillacs were big in the day. You know, you got all these sisters and, you know, your road people and what have you. You need a big car. So they're traveling around in this Cadillac, and these KKK is what I'll call them, ran up on them and were accosting them aggressively. And they said the only way that they were able to escape was that one of the sisters pretended to be demonically possessed and came at them, you know, pretending to be demonically possessed, and that scared these white men away. And that's what inspired the song How I Got Over, How I Made It Over. So anyway, they put their version out. It was written and published in 1951. And then about 10 years later, Mahalia started performing it, at least in ways that we could see. So like if you Google it now, you'll see, and please do, there's Mahalia, there's like two versions that you really need to look at. There's one where Mahalia is singing in a church. It looks kind of to me like Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem. Like it's, you know, like a glorious church, and, you know, the black folks are like in their furs and stuff. And I mean, I'm from Harlem. My grandmother, all my dad's side of the family is based in Harlem. So my grandmother went to a Baptist church in Harlem, not Abyssinian. But the Baptist churches tend to be very pulled and very staid. There's not a whole lot of shouting and, you know, running around the sanctuary, as it were. And so Mahalia, you know, she's singing. And she's shouting too, and she, you know, it's a good dignified shout, but she's shouting and she sings a song, honey. And the Baptists, honey, they can't really be bothered. I mean, there's a little clap or whatever, and you can see the people kind of feel it, but there's no, like, you know, now how everybody has to like wave their hands and fall back and, you know, express themselves. We feel free to express ourselves, praise the Lord. The people back then, they weren't doing all that, so. So you'll find that performance of Mahalia doing it, and then she did it again in 1963 at the March on Washington before Dr. Martin Luther King gave the I Have a Dream speech. And those two things together are like just such a piece of like history and legacy. I mean, Mahalia sang the song in a way, you know, that I guess like I wouldn't immediately think to do it having heard the Ward sisters version first. But it has such power. I mean, like, Mahalia was able to make, like, 3 million people, like, shout, you know, like, outside. Like, you could tell, like, people wanted to, like, shout around the Washington, D.C. Mall in 1963. So, like, you have to see, like, it's ridiculous. So, Mahalia's version, it was definitely a lower, slower version. How I got over. How we made it over. You know my soul. Look back and wonder how we made it over. it wasn't a whole lot of riffing and running. People didn't do that in 1961. Well, I guess they did in R&B and soul music, but not the way that we riff and run now. It wasn't all that. It's funny, I guess, how vocals have evolved over time. But anyway, you know, obviously Mahalia Jackson don't need all that. Her March on Washington version of it was, you know, pretty iconic, obviously. She won a Grammy for it, but it was posthumously. So after Mahalia passed away, they did a Best of Mahalia album, and How I Got Over was on it. And the album won, in 1976, it won a Best Soul Gospel performance. I'm sitting here in my Grammy shirt, actually, from the 60th Grammys this year. I don't even know if they have a soul gospel category anymore. I don't think they do. They definitely have, like, they have gospel and they have like Christian, to separate the black folks and the white folks. But they don't call it soul gospel anymore. I can't remember what they call it. I'd have to look into that. But anyway, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. This is about Aretha. So Aretha did 2 days of an Amazing Grace concert in I was gonna say Atlanta, Georgia, in Los Angeles, California. It was January 13th and 14th. So, you know, they were in New York at that time, and she was coming out to LA to film a show, and so they decided that while she was out here, she was going to do this live gospel concert. She was on Atlantic, but Warner Brothers was supposed to do the filming, and it was supposed to be like the Woodstock movie. Like, this was supposed to be like her personal Woodstock. So they put a lot of work into it. James Cleveland, Reverend James Cleveland, was like the king of gospel music at that time. You know, everybody, you know, would sort of like pattern, you know, their choirs and stuff, and model it after like what he was doing. And so she got together with him. He was essentially her MD for the for the concert. And then Sidney Pollack was like a young director at the time. I don't even really know what all Sidney had done before he got charged with this assignment, which is also interesting because the reason why it's been 46 years that they haven't released the documentary is that like he made a mistake. Like, he didn't have like a click, and so they weren't able to sync the film and the sound. And so because they couldn't fix it, or couldn't, you know, see their way clear to fix it, the movie never came out. And it wasn't until really like 2011, I think, that the producer, who has now, you know, owns the rights along with the family, he bought the rights to it, and he got together with someone and they pieced that thing together, and were finally able to, they were supposed to show it in 2015 at a film festival, and they got sued by Aretha, who didn't want the film to come out. And I think there was a lot having to do with that. You know, she felt jerked around because it had been, you know, decades, and they didn't do her right, you know, at the time. You know, like, why would you send, you know, no hate to Sidney Pollack, but like, why would you send him to come and do this thing, and you can't even sync the film and the sound? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, Aretha came out with her team, and they put this together, and they did it over 2 days. They did it at, what's the name of the church? New Temple Missionary Baptist Church. And it was a very small church on the south side of LA. Actually, my bishop was there, the bishop of my church, Faithful Central Bible Church. His name is Bishop Kenneth Omer, and he's a great teacher and a fantastic person. And he talks about it. You know, he attended. He said it was very hot. There was no air conditioning, which, I mean, Aretha is sort of notorious for, she likes her voice and her vocals to be warm, so she doesn't like for the air to blow at her shows, and I guess this particular concert was no different. he said that, you know, there was a lot going on. He said, you know, you had like people playing wrong chords, you had, you know, folks singing wrong words, the transitions, some of the transitions were wrong. He said there was just a lot going on, but even still, you know, the Spirit of God was there and was moving, which is evidenced by like when you see it, like you still want to run around the movie theater or wherever, your house, because I haven't actually seen the documentary yet, but I'm very much looking forward to it. But yeah, I don't know what one had to do to secure an invite. Honey, yes. So Mick Jagger is there, like getting his bops on. There's like this one little girl in these like afro puffs, and she's got this footwork going, like it's craziness. And then you just have Aretha doing this good flat-footed singing, and you have James Cleveland banging on the piano, and it's just excellence. Even in with all the things that went wrong, it's just excellent. Also, Aretha's father, Rev CL Franklin, he was there in attendance with Clara Ward together, and this is Clara's song. So Aretha got to do it in front of Clara, and I'm sure it wasn't her first time doing it, but like in this context, you know, it was, and she just murdered the song. She just took it to the next level. So I'm sure that, you know, Clara must have been like a real point of pride for, you know, like essentially her stepdaughter at this point in time to just come in and just, you know, bring her song, you know, more fame, not fame, but like to make the song more widely known. And now look at how widely known it's going to be. Once this documentary comes out, churches are probably going to start singing How I Got Over again. I mean, we have so much, like we have an embarrassment of riches in the black church of songs that we can sing. But yeah, this is going to be something for this particular song, I believe. Okay, so for the masterminding of this particular song, James Cleveland and Aretha, they sped up the song. So Mahalia's, like I said, was a little more slow, and we heard a little bit of how that went. Aretha's is how I got over, how I got over, you know my soul, look back and wonder how I got over. It may be even like a hair faster than that. And you got somebody beating the living heaven and hell out of a tambourine, the drums, and then just the choir. You have like 3 rows of choir, honey, and they are giving it to you. So like I said, her version of the song is very closely matched to the Ward singer's version of the song. So the backgrounds are pretty much the same, except for there's some changes like in the middle section. So how I got over, how I got over, how I got over, how I got over, you know my soul, look back, wonder how I got over. They do that 2 times. Just as oh yes. Okay, so this is interesting. The Ward sisters, they do the oh yeses, but they don't do it like what's so brilliant about what Aretha did. Just as soon as I did it, oh yes, the man is there for me, oh yes, oh yes, then I'm playing the song back, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, he died for you and for me, and thank him because he brought me. Thank him because he taught me. I want to thank him because he kept me. Thank God he never left me. I want to sing hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Storm is up. You know my soul. Look back and wonder how I got. Oh, okay. So the Ward sisters, they do the oh yeses, but it was the 50s. So the Ward sisters sang it very much. They don't cut off the ings. You know, they were very pulled, and it's they pronounce things. Aretha, you know, she'll cut off her, you know, the ings become an n. My soul look back and wonder how I got over, you know, and it's over. It's not over. So that's just some of the ways that you know, in the 50s, I think there's a lot that goes into that, but there's a way that African Americans comported themselves pre-integration and then post integration, and everything was like very proper. Even if you didn't have much, like, you know, you were pulled and as proper as you could be with what you had. And now it's not that like people don't want to, you know, speak the Queen's English or whatever, but there's a code switching thing that happens with us, and so when we're amongst ourselves, you know, that comes out, you know, in the speech. It comes out in the way that you even sing, you know, gospel music. And so I think a lot of that was sort of prevalent here. Her and Reverend Cleveland picked up the melody. They picked up the tempo. Excuse me, choking to death. And they were just hitting that thing, you know, for the blood of Jesus. Oh my God. So it's like, you know, 3 minutes of just like a whirlwind like comes and like hits you, and you're just like, what just happened to me? You know, it's almost like not how you got over, but like what just came over you. So the oh yeses, Aretha changed the oh yeses from just a simple oh yes, that like the Clark sisters. How many times am I gonna talk about the Clark sisters? That the Ward sisters would do. I want to thank him for how he brought, oh yes, thank him for how he taught me, oh yes. Well, Aretha, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. And it's just that little thing is so brilliant. Because when the choir has real specific things to do, most of the time the congregation is going to do what the choir is doing, right? You pick out your part, you know, I'm a soprano, I'm a tenor, I'm an alto, I'm gonna clap with the choir, and I'm gonna do what they do. So if the choir has something to do, oh yes, thank him because, oh yes, thank him because, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, never let, oh yeah, I wanna sing hallelujah. You know, like the choir, that's how you get the congregation into it. So they got the audience like ramped up. Like, I really want to know, did somebody run around a little sanctuary? Because if I had been there, probably would have been me. So anyway, they did add a little part, over, so look back and wonder how I got over. Wonder. That part was not in there, so that's new from James Cleveland and Aretha, and whoever else was in the mix with them. And then they really drove it home at the end with I always say with any kind of song, it doesn't have to be gospel, there's something in repetition. When you have a section of a song and you repeat it, or a word or a melody, there's something in repetition that it might not even really be that profound, but there's something in repetition that in a song takes it to the next level. So you have the I wanna thank him, thank you, and they pound that home for a good while, and it ramps the energy of the song up to like the nth degree. And the Ward sisters do that too, but because of the tempo, I think that Aretha does it at, it's, you know, it's like this. And then she goes into now in gospel music, they always talk about the moan. If you moan, that the devil don't know what you're saying. And so and I believe that. So I think like when she rolls into those moans coming out of the thank yous, the song is just, it's just the brilliance of God. I love this song. That's my breakdown on the song. Let's move on to the next section, which is charts. So this song came out, or this version of her song came out in 1972. So we had Billboard charts then. Billboard says that the album Amazing Grace did like amazingly well. Like it flew off the charts, and I even remember reading that in the biographies that I was reading about Aretha following her passing away. But the album did #7 on the Billboard 200 in 1972. Yeah, they couldn't keep the album on the shelves, and and you know, like every black church was like singing these songs, right? So the Amazing Grace album actually was the best-selling album of Aretha's entire career. It's the best-selling live gospel album of all time. So no one has yet to break that record. And a lot of the gospel artists today love to do live albums. Like, that's what they do. But no one has broken Aretha's record for a live gospel album yet. And I dare say it'll probably be a while before they do, because Aretha was already a secular artist at the time that she did this, you know. So it was like people had already been, you know, chain with her, and then she turned around and was like, oh, and by the way, here's this Amazing Grace. And they were like, well, what is this about? And then she knocked their socks off, right? So that I can't think of like a secular artist now who has turned around and done like and I'm sure there have been, actually there are some. But I don't know that they've done like whole gospel albums. Leave in the comments, like if you can think of a Whitney. So the preacher's wife, right? That had like it wasn't all gospel, but you know, we listen for like those certain gospel songs. I Go to the Rock. Who would have imagined the king? I Go to the Rock. That's my cut. Ooh, I love that song. I guess Whitney would be like the only other person who had reached like secular fame and then turn around and like smack people in the face with like this gospel album. But still, Aretha's is no filler, no fluff. You know, ain't no Bobby Brown, you know, or whatever. Ain't no James Brown up in here. It's just Aretha singing flat-footed gospel music. So it's the best-selling live gospel record of all time. And then she also did win a Grammy while she was living. Give people their flowers while they're alive. 1973, she won the Best Soul Gospel Grammy for Amazing Grace. So props to Aretha. Okay, so the next section I want to talk about is other performers. We've already talked about the Ward sisters who originated the song. We've talked about Mahalia, who made it iconic during the March on Washington. There's a brother named Brother Joshua Nelson. He is a gospel singer and a Hebrew teacher. He's African American, but he is also Hebrew. And he sings it in the style of Mahalia. If you're interested, you should Google him. He's very talented. He sang it back before Carlton Pearson was like excommunicated from the church. He would do this Azusa thing every year, and like all the major gospel singers of that day, this was in the 90s, would come out and sing, and he performed it at one of the Azusas. It was amazing. And then Shirley Caesar is also known for singing it. I love Shirley. Hold My Mule. Shirley sang it at the March on Washington 50th anniversary. That's deep, right? The 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. Shirley sang it. And then at Aretha's funeral, Shirley Caesar sang it, and she sang it with Tasha Cobbs Leonard. And Tasha, I think, is going to be like the new queen of gospel, you know, in the coming years. Well, it's going to be neck and neck, really, between Tasha and Kiera Sheard. Both of those sisters have, like, an incredible anointing on them, but Tasha just has this thing. She just has this thing. And so she sang it together with Pastor Shirley. And Pastor Shirley really let Tasha sing most of it. I mean, Pastor Shirley started it off, but Tasha sort of brought it home, and it was great. I mean, you could tell, like, from the audience, like, everyone, like, popped up out of their seats when it came time to sing How I Got Over. And I think it just brings back so many memories for people who know the song and maybe were at the concert, or just, you know, the song has ministered to them in their lives. Or, you know, like I said, when that Amazing Grace album, like, went nuts and, you know, you couldn't keep it on the shelves, folks were singing it in their churches. So I'm sure, you know, a lot of people just, like, it takes you back. There's certain songs that I hear, you know, that I'm like, oh, that was 19, whatever. I'm not going to say no dates. But anyway, so those are the other notable performances of the song. Okay, this is an interesting little tidbit when I was Googling, doing my Googlations on how I got over, it popped up in this video that said Uptown Night. It didn't say Uptown Saturday Night, it said Uptown Night. And I think they did that so that the video doesn't get snatched down. But the song was used in Uptown Saturday Night, which stars Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte, and Bill Cosby. But it's they use the song in a sort of blasphemous, tongue-in-cheek way. There's like a heist that's going on, like a deal for hot goods or whatever. I haven't seen the movie, but essentially they're handing this briefcase back and forth, and it's filled with all types of gold and treasure and whatnot. And they're doing this sort of like shenanigans, like in church, like while the girl is singing How I Got Over. It was the 70s. What can we say? Praise the Lord. Okay, so for the culture rating, I normally do this like to say, you know, like, does the song push the culture forward? You know, does it, you know, put us back a pace? It's kind of hard to sort of, it's hard to you can't, this song is the culture, right? Because gospel is our culture. Like, African American culture is deeply rooted in gospel music and slavery even. I mean, hello. Like, we sang spirituals in the cotton fields and in the tobacco fields and in the sugarcane fields. So you can't really do it for the culture rating because it is the culture. The song really speaks to salvation. You know, it's it looks back to wonder, like, how we made it all this way, how we made it from the shores of West Africa to where we are now, you know, 400 years later. How did we make it over? It talks about, you know, Jesus or Yeshua, Yeshaya, whatever, however you like to say his name. How he did, you know, was hung for us and did, you know, bleed, suffer, died, so that we might be able to come before the Father, that we might be grafted in to the family. That we might be saved. So it's an epic song. It's not just, you know, I think a lot of times people who, you know, are not from a faith-filled tradition, you know, everyone loves gospel music because it makes them feel good. And then sometimes it gets lost, like, what the purpose of it is. Like, a lot of times, you know, people come in New York, European visitors and stuff, they come on these tours and they go to black churches and like, and observe or whatever. And I feel like sometimes it's almost like animals in a zoo, like, oh, this is how the Negroes worship or whatever. And like, they enjoy the music because, you know, there's life in the music, but the source of the life is Jesus, and that gets lost sometimes. So in any event, this is coming out. I know a lot of people are going to go see this movie because it's Aretha, and, you know, her voice is, you know, for the ages. But I hope that, you know, some folks like get saved off of this documentary, because I think that was what she had in mind. You know, she wasn't just doing it just to be doing it. I mean, this is like what she comes out of, and I think at the end of the day, like, what was most important to her. So I hope that this Amazing Grace wide release is well received. I know it will be, and I hope it changes some lives. And I hope you've enjoyed this Muse on Melody. If you haven't subscribed, please hit subscribe. Hit the like button. That would really help me out. Check out my other videos. Check out some of my original tunes. If you're a producer and you need vocals, I do vocal packs. You can find them on my website, www.kiamuze.com. I write. I do vocal production. So just reach out to me. You can find everything on my website. And I will see you on the next video. Peace.